So you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the Evening Standard columnist Ayesha Hazarika and the Sun's political editor Tom Newton-Dunn. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Guardian's top story says trade unions and business organisations across Britain and Europe are joining forces to demand more pace and urgency around Brexit negotiations. Brexit also leads the Daily Telegraph. It reports that another cabinet war is brewing after the business secretary urged industry leaders to use their influence to soften Brexit. Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary is preparing to ask for a £4 billion boost for the armed forces budget. That's according to the Times front page. While the Eye says that Cabinet Ministers' public squabbling over tax is damaging the Tories' election chances. He's not smiling now. The Metro leads with the guilty verdict for terrorist Khalid Ali, who was planning a deadly attack outside the Houses of Parliament. The Financial Times reports on plans by the US technology giant General Electric to simplify its structure by spinning off its healthcare and oil divisions. The Mirror leads with a vote by GPs to cap their number of daily appointments, amid reports that some are seeing 70 patients a day. The Express features a photo of Prince William laying a wreath to remember victims of the Holocaust while on his historic visit to Israel. The Daily Mail reports on the anger following Justice Minister Rory Stewart's suggestion that prison sentences less than a year should be scrapped. The Daily Star reports on the human toll of the ongoing hot weather. While the Sun is urging the government to fly the England football team's flag up and down Whitehall to support its World Cup campaign. And with me now to take us through the papers, Ayesha Hazarika and Tom Newton-Dunn. What do we think to that, mixing politics and sport?
Tremendous idea. Slightly dumbs down the dramas of what's going on with a little bit of light relief. The nation needs a bit of it.
Do you agree, Ayesha?
Well, I'm sort of more into politics now. Being Scottish, I'm not really that interested in the World Cup.
Oh, now I've started it. OK, shall we get into the papers then? The Times, first of all, page one, Cabinet having a little bit of a dispute over Brexit. Shock, horror.
Quelle surprise. Well, I mean, Brexit has just catalysed this huge ideological split. And not just actually in the cabinet, but in the Conservative country. I mean, the entire country is divided, but the Conservative Party is deeply divided over this. And there used to be a sort of protocol in politics where, of course, every Secretary of State lobbies hard for money. There, isn't an infinite amount of money. There's always a sort of tussle ahead of spending reviews, and there's always a lot of lobbying going on. But now, everybody is just lobbying out in the open. People are openly briefing against each other and being incredibly disloyal to the office of the Prime Minister. There was a sort of a rule that you didn't maraud around, just kind of staking out your claim as brazenly as this.
We've not really seen this before to this extent,
No, we
have
haven't.
we?
I mean, look, definitely, particularly defence secretaries have always been under pressure. That's been true of Labour defence secretaries as well. There's always been a sort of chronic underfunding of defence. But this is in a whole different league. I mean, at the weekend, you had Gavin Williamson, who is a very new defence secretary. He's only been in the post for 8 months. He's so far famed for telling Putin to shut up and go away. He's seen as a bit of a pipsqueak rather than a sort of a big Herculean sort of, muscular, towering figure. But even at the weekend, he was sort of briefing the papers left, right and centre, saying he would bring down the Prime Minister if he didn't get his money. You have the business secretary who is openly out there saying, actually, business, rise up and make sure we get a soft Brexit. You have Liz Truss today who is out sort of briefing against ministers. I'm afraid there's been an absolute breakdown of discipline and it is absolute mayhem.
This speaks to the Prime Minister not being a very strong leader, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Prime Minister is incredibly weak. In a normal situation, the Prime Minister would be laying down the law, but we haven't got that situation. You have a situation where ministers can openly brief against the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, basically was going to defy the whip on Heathrow and got a free pass to suddenly just zoom off to Afghanistan or Love Island or wherever it was that he wanted to go. I mean, it's easy to sort of, say this is chaos, but I have to say in the 20 years of watching politics, I don't think I've seen anything as sort of openly dysfunctional and disloyal as what we're seeing now. And because Theresa May...
Since Gordon Brown's final year.
No.
That was pretty spectacular.
But that was two people. There were two people vying for position.
About 17.
Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, who are against each other. What you've got here is you've got the beginning of the leadership contest happening right now, when literally Brexit is so important. We've got massive problems with housing, the health service, schools, and we've got all our cabinet ministers starting to launch their own leadership contests.
Do you think that's what we're seeing, Tom?
Well, I generally think and I bear no candle for Theresa May or Gordon Brown, but I really do think the parallels between what we're seeing now are very similar to the last year of Gordon Brown, 2009, 2010, where Ayesha was circling government herself. And what happened there was exactly the same. Very senior Labour cabinet ministers, politicians in 2009 and 2010 kind of smelt that Gordon Brown was pretty much finished. He wasn't going to win the general election. They thought they might need to get him out beforehand, and his authority evaporated. Rather like today, Theresa May's authority evaporated. Then cabinet ministers were openly challenging Gordon Brown. Now, cabinet ministers not even bothering to openly challenge Theresa May because she's no longer a potential figure in the future, but they're ripping each other's throats out. There are two doing precisely that today. Greg Clark making an extraordinarily soft Brexit appeal and positively encouraging businesses to keep on speaking out, to keep on making the case for a softer Brexit, a good frictionless deal where we tear up all those Theresa May red lines and start talking real Turkey with the EU. Remember, the exact opposite of what the likes of Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, was saying at the weekend, that these people were positively treacherous for undermining the PM's negotiation, and Boris Johnson, who told business that, something that's unrepeatably rude. So what is happening is authority is breaking down, but what's different in 2009 is that there is still a huge prize to be won, which is shaping Brexit. Is it going to be a hard Brexit? Is it going to be a soft Brexit? And the reason why so much noise is building up is because we think when the Prime Minister takes the Cabinet down to Chequers next Friday, just one day now, not two, there will be the most almighty bun fight, final reckoning, and the PM will have to get off the fence and choose between her hard Brexiteers or her soft Brexiteers.
And is this
she might fudge it, which is what she's done all along.
Final.
Well, time is running out. Time is running out really fast.
I just want to come back on one thing you said about that period in 2009 with Gordon Brown, which was a very difficult period towards the end. But the massive difference between the situation with Gordon Brown and Theresa May, Gordon Brown actually will be judged very kindly by history for what he did with the financial crisis. He had G8 countries looking to him for leadership. He was actually seen as having done quite a good job. I mean, obviously, it didn't help him in terms of winning the general election. Theresa May is not in that position. Gordon Brown had an authority.
No, but it's an evaporation of authority rather than how they'll be judged in the future. It wasn't as dysfunctional as it is now. Bad.
I mean, look, I was there and it was pretty bad, but it is certainly not as bad as it was now.
3 different coups against him to try and unseat him in the last year.
But the country could have gone off a cliff edge with the financial crisis, and it didn't.
Some could say the country could go off the cliff edge any minute with Brexit imploding.
But Gordon Brown stopped that happening.
How do you know Theresa May isn't stopping this happening?
Oh, well, come on. I mean,
well, it hasn't happened. In fairness, it hasn't happened yet.
It remains to be seen because Theresa May cannot make a decision. She keeps kicking things down the road. That can has been kicked down that road. There's hardly any of the can left now.
Well, or the road.
Yeah.
Staying with the Conservatives and their infighting, this story enlarges to encompass the tax row that they've had their various voices on.
This is Liz Truss. So we had disloyal Cabinet Minister Part 1 with Greg Clark mouthing off today for his type of Brexit, not agreed by the Cabinet. Disloyal Cabinet Minister Part 2 was Liz Truss, who gave a speech some 7 hours later this evening, in which she, by my count, filleted no less than 3 other members of the Cabinet who she sits alongside and loyally serves with. One was Gavin Williamson, who was on the front page of the Times already, calling for $4 billion a year up to more for defence, which is a huge sum of money, which is almost impossible for the government now to find since they've already given $20 billion a year extra to the NHS. She says this is a very unmacho thing to do. He thinks he's being a hard man by taking on the Prime Minister. Actually, a proper good minister governs with less money. She attacks other cabinet ministers for suggesting we should be raising taxes, such as Philip Hammond, to pay for that $20 billion of NHS. And finally, she goes for Michael Gove and makes the most extraordinary joke about him. She's a big bugbear with Michael Gove as he's going around banning everything he can find that's made of plastic or is environmentally polluting, which she thinks it's not for Tories to do because they should be freeing people up rather than nanny-stating them. And she made an extraordinary joke about how the Tories should not be banning wood-burning Goves. I mean wood-burning stoves. Not the best joke ever, but to actually call out the name, albeit in jest, of another cabinet minister who is affecting government policy that's been signed off by the cabinet.
And she more or less called him a windbag, didn't she?
She absolutely did. She said there's enough hot air. I have some sympathy with her on that, to be fair. But what's really interesting about this is, I think, Liz Truss saying to people, you know, showing a bit of leg, saying, you know what, I could be a future contender for a Conservative leader. And she's actually trying to put some clear blue water between her and some of the more kind of sort of middle-of-the-road Conservatives. She's sending a strong signal to the Conservative base.
Traditional, libertarian, tax-cutting, old-fashioned Tory.
Many of whom feel dismayed and very deeply confused about what's happening to the Conservative Party.
Work as a figurehead, though?
Well, look, who knows what happens in politics now? But remember, you have a Conservative Party which is now challenging the very sacred cows, the principles upon which it was funded. First of all, you know, having a go at business. Conservatives were always the party of business. They're saying business, you know, naff off, we don't care about what you're saying.
Taxes.
Raising taxes without costing. This $20 billion for the NHS, let's remember, is pretty much uncosted. They haven't been straight with people, saying more borrowing and more taxes going up. And now you have every single government department coming out saying, actually, we want more uncosted spending. This is not the traditional Conservative Party, and a lot of Tory members and grassroots members will quite like the cut of her jib.
And I think she'll have a dog in the race. Of course, if you put yourself up for a potential leader candidate, it's also to jockey for position. You may get 10 followers, but that's 10 people you can trade off with someone else to get yourself a good job in their cabinet. So this is now, with Theresa May, in my view, within her last year of power now. I think by this time next summer she'll either be gone or will have announced she's going by the autumn. It's a full-blown, open bun fight, and quite frankly, the only one who's going to win all that is political journalists.
Yes, it's like, not being done behind closed doors, that's for sure. Just very quickly, we've just got time for this heartwarming story, I feel, about the teacher that's ploughed her substantial prize money back into education. This is in The Guardian.
This is a great story about a teacher called Andrea Zafirakou, who is a teacher from North London, and she won this competition for basically being the best teacher in the world. And she achieved a lot of her results by really focusing on arts and culture. And she's going to use the money she won, I think it's £1 million, $1 million to set up a charity for the arts. Many schools are really complaining that their arts budgets have been cut, creativity's been squeezed out of the school curriculum, and actually exposing children to arts and culture from a young age is proven to be so beneficial for them, not necessarily because they'll go on and become great musicians or actors. It builds confidence, it builds sort of teamwork ability. It's seen as having real cross-curricular benefits.
So admirable, because she could have paid off her mortgage and she chose not to.
I had the pleasure of meeting her briefly, actually, in a similar TV studio to this, and she's the most wonderfully modest, softly spoken, warm person who just effervesces joy and happiness, and the sort of person that, you know, if I was a kid, I'd love to. All the teachers you always liked at school, the ones that you wanted to be, you wanted to follow, not the strict ones. And she absolutely summed up the very best of teaching. Wonderful woman.
Bless her, bless her. Much to be admired there. We are going to take a break on that positive and heartwarming note. Coming up, why Tom's paper, The Sun, is encouraging people to fly the flag of St George. Wonder why. Welcome back to the press preview with me this evening, Ayesha Hazarika and Tom Newton-Dunn. We are going to continue by having a look at the Mirror and overstretched GPs. The headline there suggesting that some seeing as many as 70 patients a day.
Yeah, this is coming out of the British Medical Association annual conference, and GPs are just saying that they are really, really struggling with the sheer number of people they have to see. They're doing, they see about an average about sort of, some up to, it's about 70 a day. The average is about 41 a day for 10 minutes. Interestingly, in Sweden, we are told Sweden's GPs see 13 people a day, typically for 30 minutes. And one of the big arguments is that people are coming to the GP now with so many kind of complicated needs, particularly mental health issues as well, that 10 minutes is just not enough time for the GP to actually do a proper analysis. And
I thought it was less than 10 minutes, actually, that was the standard.
It's definitely not much more. You're in and out there pretty fast, aren't you? But, of course, if you impose a cap on the amount of patients a day you can see, that will do probably one of two things. One, it makes it a lot harder to see a doctor. You've got to wait longer because they're getting less people through. Two, the government will probably not be able to sustain that for very long because people get so fed up. It will probably force them to employ an awful lot more doctors. Now, it takes years to train them, so yet another immigration round will come where there'll be huge pressure to yet again raise the cap to allow more doctors in from abroad to fill up doctors' surgeries which are already overflowing.
There are shortages in the existing GP numbers. Lots of GPs are leaving because of the stress, and there is a shortage. The other thing which puts a lot of pressure on GPs is the fact that adult social care is in a massive mess as well. So a lot of people come to the GP when actually they need to be, you know, it should be an adult social care issue, but it's not joined up. And anyway, we all know, and there's a big funding issue. So it's all a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Take us into the...
Cheery, jazz hands.
the Times.
Yeah, this is...
Neglect.
Yeah, sorry for this, another depressing story, but a very, very important investigation by The Times, which is showing that the number of children in care is at a record high. It's gone up to 73,000. And I was shocked by this figure. Almost 90 children are taken into care every single day. Obviously, that's a shocking statistic. Yep, it says here 90 children are taken into care each day. And not only is that a shocking...
Not forever, but, you know, maybe for a week, maybe for an awful lot longer.
But sometimes for longer. And, of course, not only is this a terrible kind of moral issue, it also has a huge financial impact as well. The local government association, it's often local councils that have to sort of pick up the brunt of this, is saying there's going to be a funding gap of 2 billion. But the big issue is a human cost. Children that go into care are 7 times more likely to be excluded than other children from school, 6 times more likely to end up with a criminal conviction. And so, you know, we really need to try and find ways of dealing with this. Often the families they're coming from have got a lot of deprivation, there's alcohol, drugs abuse. And what The Times has put together, there's a 5-point plan, but one of the first things is early intervention. But just one story I wanted to leave you on this. Lord Adonis, who is obviously a big Remainer, often gets called, you know, you're the arch elitist in society. What people don't know about Lord Adonis is that he grew up in a children's home himself. And he was lucky enough to get some very good care that spotted talent in him and put him in the right direction. So if you think about all the children who are having their talent wasted, you know, it's a huge human cost and it's a huge cost to our country.
Very quickly, The Sun, your paper, Tom. I know you've been excited to tell us about this.
So, well, we are doing a bit of immense patriotism tomorrow and calling upon the government to fly the Cross of St George from every government building from the knockout stages onwards from Monday to cheer on Harry Kane and the team, which is tremendous. There is an even better story than that in the paper, though, where we look at my favourite person of the night, who you'll see any second
Not
now,
me.
apart from Ayesha, and it's Jamie Richardson, super fan Jamie Richardson from Leeds. Wait for it. What he has done is already, before we've won a single thing, before we've even got into the group stages, look at this. He's brilliant. He's tattooed the World Cup on his belly. England 2018 World Cup winners. And why has he done this? And he tells mates down the pub, where else? I'm going to be the first person to have an England World Cup winner's tattoo. You sure are sunshine. Now, he either is going to be the nation's largest klutz in a few days' time if he get knocked out, or he's going to be right.
Hero, I know.
I really hope for Jamie's sake he's right, because there is a patriot for the whole nation to be proud of.
I just feel like he's tempting fate now. He's just jinxing it.
He certainly is. But don't you just want it to come true just for Jamie?
No, because I'm
just
a
for Jamie.
Scot.
Oh, yeah, of course.
This is what people are going to be
That's
betting
English
on,
and
aren't they? Is Jamie an idiot or is he a complete genius? That's what I think the odds should be on.
Certainly very committed.
Good on him. That is World Cup fever going mad. And
is it the heat? Maybe he's got heat stroke. That's why he's done
also,
it.
another good story that we could quickly touch on is that the front page of the Times, we're running out of beer. Not just because of the heat, but also because of back-to-back games.
And other fizzy drinks are not available as well. Not just the alcohol, Tom. Tom and Ayesha, thank you so much for taking us through the papers this evening. Good to see you.
Thank you.